This was a topic that was included in last year's post-seminar survey that they would like to have covered was how to write an IPM plan with an emphasis on organic. So I'm taking this one on. Want to first start out with, well, what is IPM? IPM is a ecosystem-based strategy. So when we make a plan, we're thinking of the whole environment, not just the insect pest problem that you're trying to solve, but how everything is interplayed with each other. And then that strategy that focuses on long-term prevention of pests or their damage through a combination of techniques. IPM really does usually rely on combining techniques instead of just using one as an answer, combining those techniques together to get a better control. So combination of techniques such as biological control, habitat manipulation, modification of cultural practices, and use of resistant varieties. Pesticides are used only after monitoring indicates that they are needed according to established guidelines. Those guidelines are based in research that has been previously done, and treatments are made with the goal of removing only the target organism. Pest control Pest control tools are selected and applied in a manner that minimizes the risk to human health, to beneficial and non-target organisms, and to the environment. So IPM can be used in both organic and conventional cropping systems. Pesticides are a part of IPM. They are a last resort part of IPM, but there are organic pesticides out there that are options for growers. Now, growers do not need to choose to use pesticides, whether organic or conventional, but it is an option. It is a tool that's in the toolbox. So what is a pest? So when we talk about like, oh, okay, we're going after pest insects or what is a pest? And this is something that the answer is situational. For instance, this deer in a forest would not be considered a pest. But if this deer was in your front yard eating your garden, it would be considered a pest. For instance, we're trying to relate this to grapevines, spiders are great beneficials to have in the vineyard. But black widows in the vineyard are considered a pest because they can affect human health. And so it is situational, and it's something to keep in mind when we talk about pests. IPM toolbox. So we try to think of IPM as we have this toolbox and we have all these different tools that we can use, and you try to find the tool and combination of tools that work best for the situation that you're looking at. For instance, if you have a screw, you would not grab the hammer out of the toolbox to drive a screw into a wall. You would pull out the screwdriver. And so trying to match the tools that we use with the insects biology, it's seasonal dynamics, the environment, all these things have to come into play when choosing what tools am I going to use. And there are a lot of tools that we use in IPM. This is a list of some of the tools that are available to us. And so it's, a wide range for you trap crops, conservation of biocontrol, using barriers, row covers or mulching, rotation or fallow, which is not really usable in vineyard settings. But there's other ones, trap crops, planting resistant varieties. We do a lot of these in vineyards. So there are 6 steps of IPM. The very first step is identify the pest. It's very important that you identify what the species is that you're dealing with. And the reason being is that every species is slightly different from the next. Even closely related species sometimes have different life cycles. So if you try to apply a certain control measure because it worked for species A, but you have species B, it might not work the same. And so it's very important to understand the identity of the pest so that we know you can look into the classification, the biology of the pest, and what do we know about this insect to try to find that weak link in their life cycle that you can go after. The second step is to assess the threat. You do sampling and thresholds. So sampling to see is the population high enough that it warrants a response. Now, sometimes there are insects that are out in the vineyard that never cause an issue in the vineyard. They're present. We have neutral insects that say reproduce on the ground cover, but never go up into the grapevines. We also have insects that are pests, but they're in low numbers. And every once in a while, they might flare up. And you have to do something to control that population, but it's not something that you need to respond immediately every single time. The population is sometimes kept in control with biocontrol that naturally occurs. So again, sampling and assessing the threat of what, have they met the thresholds? Number 3, assess management options, and then you select your tactics. So again, you go back to that list and you say, okay, well, what can I use and when can I use it to be effective to knock down that population? Number 4 is to apply those tactics. And then number 5 is to evaluate the results. Did it work? And the way that you know if something worked is that you go back out and you sample. Did the number of nymphs on the, 20 leaves, was it reduced after an application of some type of control measure? And so then you're going to record those results. And then this will help with your future planning. So when you come back to the following year, and you reevaluate, okay, I did X, Y, and Z, and I thought it had pretty good control, but I think maybe I should try this other tool. Or maybe it's like, no, this worked really well. We're going to follow this plan again. And so again, being able to keep those records so that you can look back and know, what did I do and how did it work? The very first step, though, is definitely the most important, because you can misidentify your insect, and then everything that follows after it is not necessarily going to be effective. So you definitely need to start with, what species do I have, so that you can understand what the biology of that pest is, and be able to create a program that goes after that specific biology. So when making an IPM plan, you can start at ipm.ucanr.edu. And this is what the page looks like. And you can click on Identify and Manage Pests and scroll down to Agricultural Pests that you can see here in the toolbar. And then it's going to take you to a page of all these crops that we have in California. Now, it doesn't cover every single crop we have in California, but it does cover a wide range of crops, including grapes. So you can scroll down to the page, you'll scroll down to grapes. You click on grapes, it takes you to this page. And this is what you're looking at. And we have already year-round IPM programs that are written out for grape. And you can see here below that you have delayed dormancy, bud break, rapid shoot growth. You have different times of the grapevine in which you're going to look at different things. You're going to pay attention to different insects depending on their biology and when they become a problem in vineyards. So I scrolled down and I chose bud break. When you choose bud break, it takes me to this page. And you can see that there's a table grape year-round IPM program, although we are on the wine and raisin grape, which for this region is what we'd want to look at. And then what should you be doing during this time? And it says on warm days, monitor vines and spurs. And this is the insects you're going to be monitoring for. And there's a monitoring form that you can download and write in your information to keep the documentation that we're talking about. And then check pheromone traps for omnivorous leaf roller. I scrolled down some more, orange tortrix, and here's another monitoring form that you can use for those insects. You're going to monitor leaf wetness. You're going to look at track powdery mildew. And there's also consider treating for Phomopsis cane and leaf spot. Remove vines of spring symptoms of Pierce's disease. And so this gives you a program of, these are the things at this time of the year you should be looking at. Goes on to checking sticky traps for sharpshooters and another monitoring form for those insects. So, like I said, some crops already have these year-round plans for you to follow that have been put together based upon research. And here's a list of the crops on UCIPM's website that have year-round programs. So when asked, like, how do you put together an IPM program? Well, grape already has multiple programs depending on the time of year that you're interested in looking at pests and disease. So what I chose was, okay, how do I do an IPM plan for an organic orchard? Now we have olive trees in a lot of vineyards. So I chose olive because olive does not have year-round IPM programs on UC IPM. So first of all, we're going to look at olive fruit fly. It is the major pest of olives in the North Coast. And one, identify your pests. Okay, we have classification and biology of that pest, which is olive fruit fly. When is the fly most susceptible to a control measure? How many generations do we have? Where are they located? These are some of the questions that will help us in designing what our program is going to look like. So then I go back, here I am to ipm.ucanr.edu, and this is the same page that we started with looking at grapes, choosing agricultural pests. I'm going to choose olive, that's indicated here. And when I clicked on olive, it gave me, there's a long list of your different insects and mites and weeds, invertebrate pests. So I went under insect, mite, and other invertebrate management, and I scrolled down to olive fruit fly. I click on olive fruit fly, and it brings up the sections that you see on the left-hand side. Sorry, these are the sections on the left-hand side that are on the olive page. So diseases, nematodes, weeds, fruit spade thinning, more information. When I click on olive fruit fly, though, this is what comes up on that page. So I took that information and put it into a slide so that it was all consolidated and we can look at it. So there's these different sections. You have the description of your pest, the damage that it causes, and then management. You have your biological control, cultural controls, organically accepted methods. So we were talking about, well, how do you do an IPM program for an organic orchard? Monitoring and treatment decisions, and it lists the different ways of monitoring for this insect. And so when I pulled out information on this page of what are the organically accepted methods, we have cultural controls, GF120 natural light fruit fly bait, sprays of kaolin clay, which is surround, and mass trapping. So making my IPM plan for the orchard, again, those are the accepted methods on the left-hand side. So there's some decisions to be made because there are options. And oftentimes there are options of what you can choose to do. And this is where, well, what kind of trap do I want? For olive fruit fly, we have McPhail's, Alipe, and yellow sticky cards. Now, from my experience doing research in olive fruit fly, I can say that McPhail's catch a lot of olive fruit fly, but they catch a lot of everything. Butterflies, bees, wasps, all kinds of large insects get caught in McPhail's and they drown. So when you're sorting through, you have all these insects that die that have nothing to do with the insect you're looking for. Yellow sticky cards are a lot easier to count. But again, that catches anything that flies into it is attracted to yellow, which is a wide range. So the Alipe is what I end up choosing for this program. Alipe is just like a water bottle, a liter water bottle that you drill small holes at the top. And then you'll attach it you'll put Tarula yeast tablets in the bottom, which is also what McPhail traps use as an attractant, and fill with water. But those small holes at the top only allow insects of that size and smaller into entering in. So you don't get your bees and your wasp and your butterflies and large insects, your katydids and praying mantises and things like that. So it's nice because it actually is a little bit more defined of what insect you can capture. So I chose that option for my traps. And then our question is GF120, which is like your spinosad, or kaolin clay, which is surround. And there's pros and cons to both. And if you look at UCIPM's pages, it goes through some of those pros and cons to let you know what you're dealing with. Kaolin clay, you need very good coverage. And it is expensive. And it does make your trees look grayish in color, you know, because it's covering the green leaves. Where GF120, It's an option. It's a kaolin clay is a deterrent. It's not a pesticide. GF120 is a pesticide. So in this process, I chose kaolin clay. And again, these are decisions you have to make. What works for your situation, for your finances, for the time that you have to apply, for your labor, and your pest population. How much damage am I willing to accept? So if you have table olives, your damage that you are allowed to accept is very, very small, almost zero. And the reason being is that no one wants to open up a can of olives and take a bite out of the olive and have an olive fruit fly larva in it. So, but olive oil can accept a certain amount of damage because those olives will be crushed and made into oil. So there is definitely a difference, very similar to the difference between table grape damage allowance and wine grape allowance. We can handle more damage in wine grapes typically than table grapes for that reason. So under the mass trapping and monitoring device, this is what was listed. I highlighted the most important parts that I'm going to pull to create my program and place traps and fruiting trees by March 1st. So this was telling us when we're going to start, and then to hang the traps in mid-canopy in the shade on the north side of the tree. Where are they most effective? And then you're going to want to record those numbers in the flies weekly. So you're going to have to collect the traps, assess how many flies in it, and then keep a track of those numbers so you can see the population increase and when you have to respond with some type of treatment. Then when I chose the Elite Bait trap, here's some information about how to create your trap, the type of yeast, how big the holes should be that you make yourself, where to place the traps, how many traps, and then how often do you change that bait that's in the Truly yeast that's in the bottle. So again, I highlighted the parts that I'm going to take from what was written on UCIPM, and I'm going to put it into a program at the very end. Now, I chose kaolin clay. So this is saying that we're going to apply it when olives become attractive to the fly, which is usually in early June when the fruit reaches pea size. A lot of growers use pit hardening as a time in which applications would start, and then you're going to want to repeat it every 5 to 6 weeks. Some growers will only apply late in the season in which the population is highest, in which the damage is most likely. So again, Surround is not cheap to apply. You do have to apply a lot per acre and have really good coverage. So these are things that you take into consideration when choosing which tools you're going to use. So I'm also going to pull from the cultural controls, sanitation. So the olives that are remaining on the trees after harvest or have fallen to the ground need to be removed from the orchard or destroyed. So destroy all fruit that are on the ground by either burying at least 4 inches deep. It's usually not an option in an orchard, or taking to a landfill, removing, collecting, and then taking off sites. And it's because that the larvae can overwinter in that fruit, pupate, and then they emerge as adults in spring. So now that's your population, the beginning of your population, or at least part of it for the following year. This is why sanitation is important in this situation. So then what I did is that I put all that information that I highlighted, and I created this plan for how I'm going to combat olive fruit fly for the following season. And I have, okay, this is what you need to do at the beginning of the season, how often I need to check the contents and document, how often I need to replace, when do I need to apply my kaolin clay, how often do I need to repeat that, how often do I need to inspect the trees for olive fruit fly damage, to have an understanding, is it working? Are the control measures I'm putting out there, are they actually effective? Then I'm going to sample from the harvest bins and count the damaged olives. So you're going to take a subsample and look at, well, what percentage of olives had olive fruit fly tunneling in them? And it's the tunneling that really causes imparts the negative characteristics in the produce olive oil. So it's not just the stings, it's the tunneling, which the larvae is tunneling inside. So again, remove from the orchard all the olives remaining in the trees and orchard floor post-harvest. And going back to sampling the harvest bins, you want to document those numbers so then you can look at the following year, if you do the same method or if you change the method, what was the end damage that you end up assessing at the end? And then asking yourself, is that acceptable? Is that amount of damage that I found acceptable? Because sometimes it is, and that applying another control measure would cost more money than what you would be saving yourself from the reduced damage. So again, it needs to be balanced, and you have to figure out what works best for your situation in your orchard, your vineyard, and then reassess each year by keeping that documentation. And with that, I will be concluding my portion of how to write an IPM plan. And I think I don't have any questions. If you guys have any questions, you can type in a question. But we are at the end of our program.